Well, hey everyone! Welcome to episode 312 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen with your host, Matt Payne. This week, I finally got the chance to talk to one of my favorite photographers here in Colorado, Alfredo Mora. Alfredo works full-time supporting the NASA program and takes some absolutely splendid photographs. He placed third in the second year of the Natural Landscape Photography Awards and has always impressed me with his modesty and level-headedness. This week, we explore several themes across a variety of topics, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Before we start with the episode, I want to quickly thank someone for their thoughtfulness. One of our listeners, Trudy Grin, sent in this amazing note. Hi Matt, I love your podcast and I've learned so much from you and your guests. I recently had the opportunity to do a one-on-one session with John Norris in Joshua Tree National Park. I learned about him through your podcast. He was an amazing and excellent instructor, a genuinely nice individual, and fabulous to work with. I would like to support your Patreon, the $20 per month level, in his honor. Wow, that is so heartwarming. Thank you for validating my goal of building and supporting our amazing community of nature photographers on this podcast, Trudy. If you would like to support the show like Trudy, please go to patreon.com/fstop and listen to support the show. Okay, let's get to this week's episode with Alfredo Mora. All right, Alfredo Mora, it's awesome to have you here, my friend.
Hey, Matt, good to be here. Thanks so much for the invite. It's a great honor to be on your show. I've been listening for a few years, so you always do a great job, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, and always happy to have a fellow Coloradan on the show.
There you go, right? We got to stick together, man.
That's right.
There's a few of us here in Denver, and I know there's quite a few where you're at.
Yeah, I was going to say, although you're a transplant, you know.
Yeah, I don't count, right? And I happen to be a Texas, like a former Texan, so
right,
that makes it worse.
Exactly.
Well, it could be worse. I could be Californian. No offense, anybody. But.
Right, no, it's all in good fun. All in good fun.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even remember where I first came across your work, but I've really enjoyed seeing your work in Natural Landscape Photography Awards, and of course, we chat a lot over on the Discord channel, and you're over on NPN, so we see each other pretty much all over the place.
Yeah, I used to be on Twitter, and I'm not there anymore, but Instagram, yeah.
Yeah, all the places.
All the places, for sure.
So for people that aren't familiar with you, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Alfredo Mora. I'm currently based out of Denver, Colorado. Married, wonderful wife. Have a almost 10-year-old son. I just moved here from San Antonio, where I grew up. I'm originally from Mexico, but we moved here to the United States when I was very young, so pretty much lived all my life in the U.S. So yeah, grew up in the Texas Hill Country, and then in 2019 moved my family out here for work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Texas Hill Country. That is one part of Texas that I think I would enjoy photographing.
Yeah, there are some really good spots around there, and I'm ashamed to admit I never went to what's the Big Bend?
Big Bend, yeah.
National Park, where I'd love to go back there sometime and photograph it, but I never had the opportunity.
Yeah,
But yeah, Texas has got some good spots. You just got to do a little more digging, unlike Colorado, where you just turn and
right.
There's a view.
You just walk out your door and it's like, oh, this is amazing.
That's right. I forgot to mention, I'm not a full-time photographer. I do work full-time as an IT architect supporting our space program. So
yeah, that's
that keeps you
amazing.
busy.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, so you're just busy launching rockets up into space?
Yeah. A lot of it's top secret, which I can't tell you, but I'm just kidding.
That'll be the Patreon episode.
There you go. Yeah, you got to subscribe to that. But no, the running joke in the family is I take care of a lot of the space monkeys. So yeah, that's what I do. But.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about how you got into photography.
Let's see. Yeah, I think it was around 2010 when I started to get into it. I think that the digital age was around that time, or maybe 2007, 2008, around that time frame. My brother had a Canon Rebel camera, and that I picked up, and I looked through it, and I was amazed at the clarity and what you could do with it. And then there was a coworker that had later on had a 5D Mark One camera. That was pretty sweet. So yeah, that's how I got started. I remember going to New York City with my wife, and when we were dating, and I had a little Canon point and shoot, and so I was just snapping pictures, and they're just having fun, and that's really what started the whole passion for photography.
Awesome. So would you say that you started out as an architectural photographer then?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why that was. Maybe because that was what was around when I lived in Houston. It's a modern city, so there was a lot of cool architecture there. But I was also shooting wildlife, living near the coast there. Not much landscape or nature since it's all flat. So yeah, a lot of cityscapes, a lot of architecture is how I got started. And then when I moved from Houston to San Antonio around 2012, I started a small architecture photography business. And San Antonio is really cool because there's a lot of historic buildings. So it's really interesting to go and photograph that. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with that, and started to get into more landscape photography at that time, and nature photography. And then I think kind of took the long road, but eventually I found my true passion, which is nature photography. Still
Yeah,
do a little
yeah.
bit of wildlife.
But no more architecture?
Not so much. Yeah, I'm not brave enough to venture down downtown Denver.
Yeah, I was gonna say
It's
16th
getting
Street Mall
wild.
is it's a little bit different than it was 10, 15 years
Yeah.
ago.
Well, we visited Denver for work, and I brought my wife, and it was different back then. This was around 2015, 2016. City had a really cool vibe and just really nice architecture, really nice buildings. But yeah, it's changed quite a bit, and I just haven't gone down there and have, photographed the architecture. I do need to go out there, to be honest, but
Yeah,
I've been
for
so
sure.
busy just with the mountains. That's really what's calling me right now.
Yeah, I can't blame you.
Yeah. Well, you guys have it much better than we do, but
Oh, it's different, you
yeah,
know. Yeah,
Front Range. It's
yeah,
all good.
yeah. So I'm curious, since you started out as an architectural photographer, how has that informed your approach to photographing nature scenes?
Yeah, so when I was photographing architecture, I think what translates is compositions and paying attention to the compositions.
Hmm.
When you're working with an architecture firm, with the architects, they're pretty particular, and they're paying you to represent and capture the buildings or their building in a certain way. Clean aesthetics, clean lines, good use of negative space if it's called for, different perspectives, and paying attention to that in my own recent work with clean compositions and form, and making that subject shine. More of a minimalist approach, I would say. I think
Hmm.
that's how it's translated.
Yeah, that seems to resonate for me in terms of kind of when I look at your work and what makes it stand out is I feel like you've got a really good sense of composition. And the other thing I was going to mention about your photography is it seems like you have a really good grasp on moment, if that makes sense. Like you capture these little vignettes of kind of just quick snaps of time that are kind of ephemeral in nature. You know, like you have this photo that for some reason always sticks to my head where
Hmm.
you caught this snow that was caught by the wind in some pine trees. You know, it's like it's not a very complicated photograph, but it captured a really interesting moment that I think we probably see all the time, but capturing it with a camera is actually really challenging.
Yeah, yeah, that was a fun one to capture, and just being at the right place at the right time, and being aware of what's happening, slowing down. That allowed me to kind of see that and record it, and it's been a real popular one for me. So
Yeah, and
thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. So you'd mentioned earlier that you were originally born in Mexico, and I'm just curious if at all that if your cultural background has influenced your photography.
Yeah, that's a good question. I did some thinking on that one. I can't say it 100% or directly translates or influences my photography. I grew up in a small town, working since I was young, working on a ranch,
Uh-huh.
a farm.
Yeah.
We did a lot of work on the weekend, and so my dad instilled a hard work ethic in me, and also that just to be thankful for what we have and showing that gratitude. So when I go out into nature, I think that's reflected in my attitude towards nature. I'm always appreciative of being out there because it is a privilege to be there and to be blessed uh, with that environment. So I think that sort of my culture sort of influences that to some extent and that upbringing.
Yeah, and I was gonna say having the work ethic, I'm sure has influenced probably some of your approaches to photography in terms of like going back to the same places over and over again and being patient and understanding that you can go out and sometimes get nothing and at first that might be frustrating, but eventually it'll pay off, kind of that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it took me a while to come to that approach, that mindset. There's a journey that we all take, and just being aware of that, I think that's important, and returning to those places because the more you go back, the more you see, the more that's revealed, and you're always changing, and so you're seeing things differently from a year ago or even
Hmm.
just a week ago. So
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
really cool
yeah.
approach.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I'm sure spending time on the ranch and being outside and I'm sure that instilled some some respect in you for the outdoors and kind of what it meant for you growing up and things like that. I'm curious if that ever comes up in your photography in terms of things that you notice when you're outside and what you try to capture.
Showing gratitude, like I said, just being thankful for being out there in nature is what it comes down to.
Cool.
Yeah.
I know you said you work full time doing cool outer space rocket things that you can't tell us or else you'll have to kill us. But you also have a family and you have kids and you have a wife and you're trying to do things in photography. And so I'm curious, how are you finding time to make all of these great images? Tell us a little bit about your approach to balancing all of these commitments.
Yeah, it is a challenge to be honest. I'm currently working, like I said, full time. So I'm on a what's called a 410 schedule. So I work 10-hour days, 4 days a week, and then that Friday is my day off. So usually I can get away for a quick trip into the mountains or a state park, once a week, best case scenario. Now that changes once arrives. My son's out of school, so my time in the field and out in nature dramatically decreases.
Hmm.
But I try to take advantage of that one day and try to travel 1 to 3 hours away. I can usually get away with that if I leave early and then go explore, see what I can find, and then come back in time to be with my family for the weekend. So yeah, time out in the field is pretty limited, but I try to make the most out of it.
And I'm guessing or maybe remembering that choosing Denver was pretty important part of your equation in terms of putting yourself close to areas that you would want to photograph while having higher quality of life and access to the outdoors and a good job and things like that. So while it's expensive, I'm guessing that it's paid off for you.
Yeah, yeah. Being close to the scenery that we have, the mountains and all the landscape opportunities, that was a big driver for moving here. When we visited in 2016, I've never really been close to the mountains, so yeah, definitely left an impression on me. and it's worked out really nicely to have that sort of as your backyard. It's been
Yeah.
great.
But probably comes with some sacrifices in terms of cost of living and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And if I ideally I would live in a smaller town,
Right.
like you, and work full time remote, and then really because cost of living here, as you know, is it's sky high. So yeah, there's definitely trade-offs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You put a lot of what I would call extracurricular work into your photography in terms of, being involved in various communities and things like that while having a full-time job. And I'm curious for you, do you have any aspirations for where that's going to take you in the future, or is it purely driven by your passion for being a photographer?
Yeah, for now, it's just purely driven by being part of a community, passion for photography, as you said. I don't really have plans to be a full-time photographer or professional photographer for now. Maybe that'll change down the road, but by then, who knows? Maybe our AI photography will just take over everything, right? Um,
Well,
but
no,
yeah,
I mean, what's cool about that is you don't even have to leave your house.
that's right. You just do it all on the computer.
Exactly.
But yeah, but I think at that point, not to go off on a tangent, but there's going to be, I think, some value in terms of photographers that are uh, capturing a moment, an experience, and it's authentic. I think that's going to be seen as more of a, what do you call it, a craft. Like here's something that's real. And I
No,
think that's going to have some value. But
I hope so too.
yeah.
I'm putting all my money on it, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how full-time photographers do it. It's a ton of work, but it is a passion, I'm sure for many. But for now, I'm happy just doing this on the side, and like I said, it is a great passion of mine, and I like being involved in different communities, not only, well, primarily to be inspired by others,
Yeah,
but hopefully provide a little bit of inspiration as well
yeah.
for those that are coming up.
I'm just I'm just really social, so I like that part of it. Is just talking to other people.
Oh, I'm the opposite. I'm your typical introvert, so this
I
is
know you're always so polite and just very like, hey guys, I loved what you had to say about this, and everyone else is just going off on something, and you just
yeah. I'm
hang
watching on the sidelines, man.
there.
I'm not getting into all those debates. It's fun to watch, but yeah,
You're a lurker, huh?
I'm a lurker, and most of the times I'll keep my opinion to myself. Yeah.
Well, shifting gears,
Hmm.
I would love if you could talk a little bit about the importance to you of taking risks as a photographer, because that can go any number of ways, right? Physical
Sure.
risks, mental risks, risks with what you photograph, things like that.
Yeah. So to start off with, as you mentioned, we moved I moved my family out here to Denver, and that was a big risk. I didn't know how that was going to work out, but we saw an opportunity to be closer to nature, and also just the culture here about being more outdoors oriented. And so, yeah, that was a risk that we weighed, and so far it's been working out uh, from a photography standpoint and a family quality standpoint. So there's that kind of risk that people, maybe they're in a situation where they want to go and photograph new things, whether it be seascapes or the mountains, and in their current environment, they don't really have that. Of course, they could travel, but an alternative would be, well, maybe I can make a big move and make that happen. What would it take, and what are the pros and cons, and weigh those risks for themselves. So there's that aspect. There's also a risk of not following the crowd and the trends and social media is and all the things that go on there. Basically carving your own path, following your own vision and your own creative journey. That takes risks as well and some bravery, I think, to put yourself out there and being true to yourself.
Yeah, for
Those are
sure.
important.
I'm reminded of a conversation I had with Hans Strand. He said, "Be
Hmm.
brave."
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was driving on I-70 and I was listening to your talk with him and I remember that very clearly. Yeah, be brave.
yeah,
And so great advice.
yeah. So for you, you talked a little bit about your vision and kind of going a different direction. What is your vision for your photography?
Well, I think William Neal probably said it best, and it's really the experience of discovery.
Hmm.
And what that means to me is um, taking this explore-driven approach to photography. It's going into nature without any expectations. And it took me a while to learn that, and thank I guess that's one positive of the pandemic. You have time to reflect and think
Right.
and reevaluate yourself and your photography. And at that point, I was largely results oriented, especially moving to a new place and an exciting place like Colorado. You wake up and go into the mountains with this plan. I got to get to this point, and everything was new and fresh. And you were hoping for great conditions, and you know how that goes. We all go through that stage of prioritizing the results. What image did I capture on that trip that made that trip worthwhile? But now it's flipped the other way. It's more of, okay, I'm just going to spend time out in nature, see what I can see, slow down, and really connect and really discover. And so that's really my mindset and approach that I've
Yeah,
adopted.
I love that. I had the exact same experience in 2013. I moved to Portland and
Yeah,
the Pacific Northwest, and it was all results like, oh, I got to go to that spot that's been photographed by Mark Adamus, and I got to go to that spot that's been photographed by Ryan Dyer, and I got to go to this spot because I'd seen Gary Randall photograph that place, and it was like every time I'd go, it was didn't work. Of course, like there's, you know,
yeah,
especially I had a full time job then too, so I was like, you could go like maybe twice a month or something, and
right,
of course, the weather was never cooperating when you were out there, things like that. So, yeah, that shift in my approach has worked really well for me too, in terms of keeping me engaged in photography, but also exploring and, just reacting to what I find and seeing what happens.
exactly. And I think it um, it all starts when you leave the house. Before you leave the house, like, okay, um, having that right mindset before you go in and seeing what you find,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, exactly. I, man, I can't even stress enough how much that has helped me in my photography over the last few years, just erasing those expectations and just responding.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, slowing down and just observing and um, this really you know will help you a lot, I think, and growing creatively. And so it's so
yeah,
far it's been working out.
and I think it's a great way to differentiate yourself too, because only you are going to be the one that notices what you notice.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and I heard it. I heard photography being described as obviously it's a visual language, and it has with it an exponential number of choices when it comes to visual design. When you're framing up a composition, only you, um, well, the photograph will be unique because you made certain choices and the visual design. So yeah, that's one way to definitely differentiate yourself from everybody else,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. I'm curious, do you think it's necessary to go through that phase of being results driven?
Hmm. Yeah, I
I
don't
mean,
know. It's possible for somebody to just completely skip that, right? And just
probably.
go straight to making incredible, introspective, expressive images.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I
lucky
th
them.
lucky, yeah, I would say.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm
But
I'm definitely a existentialist. Like, I don't have any regrets about quote unquote wasting those years because
right,
obviously I gained
you
experience
learn.
and perspective and all of those things. But it would have been nice to get there sooner.
Right, right, yeah. I've been at it since 2010, and I'm just now realizing, oh, I'm okay at it, and
Right.
finding
Take
my own, I hate to say voice, but my own expressive qualities or approach.
Yeah.
So,
It just took a decade. It's fine.
exactly, yeah, it's the long road.
Yeah, no.
It, and not to, this reminds me of, did you read that recent article by Guy Tal and, not Guy Tal, excuse me, Brooks Jensen in his Lynn's work?
No, actually it's sitting right over there. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, it's really good. Where I want to get to is this plateau of despair, as he calls
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's when you reach the plateau of despair after going through this stages in your photography life. That's when you start making what he calls meaningful art. You know, so
No,
quite interesting.
I think that's probably true.
Maybe, yeah,
That sounds really depressing, so we should call it something else.
right, yeah,
Like the plateau of
plateau.
being okay.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
Yeah, like
Despair
plateau of
sounds sad.
decent photography. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Good article though. It made me think
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah. I think that's based on a graphic I saw once where it's called like the plateau of despair.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
probably borrowed some of it
yeah.
from that, but
All right, well, maybe this is related to that, but you recently started heavily experimenting with intentional camera movement or ICM and multiple exposure work and still images kind of as a blended approach to making your photographs. And I'm curious if you can talk about why you've gone in that direction and kind of what it's done for you.
yeah. So we talked about the transition from explore driven approach to a results driven approach to an explore driven approach. So I think just the natural progression is experimentation and pushing yourself creatively. And so I think that work, we talked about ICMs and multi-exposure blending. I think that was just a natural progression for me. Uh, it actually started, I looked it up. It was early last year when I started messing around and playing and tinkering in Photoshop. Because I think I was inspired by a number of folks doing that kind of work. Glennis Garnett, Joe Stephen, Valda
Oh,
Bailey,
yeah.
and those folks, and I was blown away that what they were doing with their photography and taking it another level that I'd never seen before.
Right.
So it's that shift from the eyewitness of recording what you saw in the field to perhaps something um, more creative, uh, more introspective, whatever the word is. But it just allowed me to explore different themes for myself and to communicate stories, ideas, emotions. A lot of the images that you see in that series deal with the destruction of our natural world, climate change, but also hope. There's one that's really has been really has resonated with people, and it's called Regeneration, and it's an image of barren trees with and the midground is ice, and then in the lower foreground are these pine cones and pine needles. And so by blending these images together, I'm able to express this idea that life is cyclical. There's an end and a beginning, but it's a circle, right? So
Yeah.
and we return from nothing. And but anyway, it's a story of regeneration. That's why I titled it.
No, I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I've always been curious for those types of images when you're in the field, kind of piecing things together, or at least seeing things, do you have the end result in mind, or are you kind of, for lack of a better term, gathering components that you'll later kind of figure out how they work together, or how does that work in your brain?
Right. And I forgot to mention, that's a good question. I forgot to mention that my Sony camera does not do
Right.
multi-exposure blending
Yeah.
in camera.
Me neither.
So yeah, I know you're a Sony shooter. Come on, Sony.
I know. That's
Um,
like the only thing that's left.
really? I mean, push out a firmware update or something. Come on.
Come on.
So I was sort of forced to do the blending and Photoshop and use layers and techniques there. But to answer your question, when I first started, yeah, I took the raw ingredients, what I've captured in the field, and I was just basically experimenting. I was saying, okay, with this image, if I change up blend modes and opacities, what could I come up with? And you find certain patterns. Like if you take an image with fall foliage, and if you do a certain blend mode, it'll tend to look like fire if you put it on top of another image.
Uh-huh.
And so that's light bulb came on, and I was like, oh, whoa, this is pretty cool. Let me see what I can do and try to explore some of these themes that I have in my head. And so that's how some of those images came about.
Yeah,
But
and
what I'm Mhm.
you've got a great article on your website that we'll link to as well, where you
Oh,
kind
thank
of
you.
talk about your approach to that.
Yeah. Yeah, for anyone who wants to check it out, that would be great. But what I'm finding now is I'm starting to preconceive images in my head. And so when I'm in the field, let's say, for example, this one where I did an ICM capture of these trees. This was after, uh, uh, I believe, after spring, or maybe it was after late summer, right into fall. And so the trees were barren, and then I captured an ICM photograph of that. Um, but nearby in a field, there were these wildflowers that were just like the last of the wildflowers of the season. And so I captured a straight image of that. And in my mind, I knew I wanted to blend these two together. And of course, Sony, my camera doesn't do multi-exposure blending, but I was able to capture those images with a purpose, with an intent. And then later on, when I got back home, after some time, I blended them together and I created that image. And so that was really an idea that was executed in the field and then completed in post versus the way I was doing it before.
Yeah, and I feel like in order to fully capitalize on that technique, you have to have a little bit of knowledge about those blend modes and like kind of
Right.
what the result's going to look sort of like so that you can kind of pre-envision what the ingredients need to look like to combine them.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, but it just takes practice, and
Yeah.
with practice, you'll get to know what those patterns are and what works, what doesn't work. I have a ton of images that just flat out don't work. Uh, and
Yeah, of
so,
course, of course.
yeah, I think in this collection that I have, I am up to 14 images total. And people might say, oh, that's not a whole lot, in a year. But what I want to express is I never try to force these photo montages or composites. I want them to feel organic, and it's not just a byproduct of, oh, I did something in Photoshop, this was the result, here it is. I want the images to have a meaning behind them and a message and a story, and with a purpose. So,
So if someone listening wanted to try this out and they either don't have a camera that can do it or they're a Sony photographer, or they don't know what their camera can do, what would you suggest someone do to kind of get going on this?
so some practical tips would be to, when you're in the field, capture images of textures, They make a great uh, option for blending later. So if you see, grasses or leaves or certain patterns, rocks, ice, just go ahead and capture those, and that's going to build up your image inventory that you can use. Um, and then, in the meantime, go ahead and start collecting other images, which will serve as your base, that you can later blend in those texture files to create something that might resonate with you to whatever it is you want to express.
Nice.
And I often use lighten, blend mode, and darken also, and multiply work well.
Okay. So just play around with those.
Just play around with those and
Different
uh,
opacities.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Just mess around with the opacities, try different images and different orders because that sometimes makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And really, Balda Bailey has some good videos on her YouTube channel where she kind of goes through her workflow and some insights into her approach, which are I found useful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I know you also still are doing just, straight images that you're editing normal without any kind of blending or anything like that. So
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
are those what are the differences between those images and your ICM multiple exposure images?
In terms of the message
Yeah,
behind them,
what you're
or
trying to communicate or like your mindset when you're capturing them, those kind of things.
the the images that are more the eyewitness approach, meaning this is what I've saw in the field and I'm capturing. I, what I want to do with those is kind of showcase nature or a moment as it happened. You've referenced that snowball image that I captured.
Hmm.
Things that folks may not have noticed. That approach helps communicate those ideas about moment versus the multi-exposure blending ICM. Those are more abstract in nature, more ethereal. So yeah, there's just two different approaches to basically conveying different messages, is what I would say.
And when you're in the field, are you kind of mentally open to both, or are you seeking one or the other, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, I think, let me think about that. Tip, because to create the first, which is
Hmm.
the eyewitness approach type images, you know, I try to enter a flow state. I try to slow down and really be mindful of the moment, or really fine tune a composition, organize something in a visual design. And so that's more of in the field, being connected to nature versus gathering the ingredients, the images to later combine and post. So yeah, there's two different mindsets that you'll need to,
Right.
to execute both.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And there, I'm guessing, I mean, you may or may not be conscious of it, but I'm guessing that kind of the speed of your thinking and kind of what you're focused on is totally different between the two approaches.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'll admit sometimes I'll do ICM if the conditions are just terrible. I try not to use it in a crutch. I don't do as much ICM now as I did last year. Um, but yeah, it's just I would say one approach to doing that mindset uh, shift, I would say.
What would you say are the top three things that have contributed to your success as a photographer?
Hmm. Okay, so this is since I'm NASA, I work for a space program. We use a lot of acronyms, so
I love it.
I have to be careful about the order I present these. So the first is we talked about explore, right? So um, when you're out in nature, just slowing down, exploring, being mindful, and being connected. So that's been a huge benefit to my photography. It's just adopting that approach. Um, the next one is play. When you're in the field, um, don't just set up your tripod. Take the time to explore the scene, look at it from different perspectives, shooting up, shooting down, different focal lengths, different techniques. We talked about ICM, uh, uh, slow shutter speeds, fast shutter speeds. Just playing and using your camera as a tool to express yourself and and capture something that you think um, might communicate a message or a story or an emotion. And then the other thing is experiment. So we talked about explore, play, and experiment. And so, that comes in a form of when you're in the editing phase, um, what's the mood that you want to convey in your image? You can go with a dark mood if you that's what you want to communicate in your image. But we talked about multi-exposure blending and photo montages and creating those through experimentation. And I think those help you unlock different levels of creativity when you go through those, um, when you adopt those approaches of explore, playing, and experimenting.
I'm really upset that you didn't go with play first.
Oh yeah, I got to be careful about that.
Come on, man. You could
Yeah, I should have done it
totally
right.
sell that. Take the
There you
Alfredo
go.
Mora P approach.
There, there you go. It's trademarked now.
Let's go with it.
Yeah, I love it.
No, actually, that's actually really good advice, though. I think all three of those things are things that I try to instill in people when they're asking me questions about my approach, too. So I think that's just great
Yeah,
advice.
that's really been super helpful in my own creative journey, I would say.
So I asked you what's contributed to your success, but maybe first we should have asked, how do you define success? What does success mean to you as a photographer?
Oh yeah, that's a tricky one because obviously success means something to different people, or it means something different to people. So obviously, if you're working professional success, am I making a living? Am I providing for my family? In my case, with me being an amateur photographer, uh, the way I define success is, am I producing work that I'm happy with, that I'm proud of, compared to last week or last year? Am I growing creatively? Am I expressing myself in a way that I want to, organically and authentically?
I
So
love
that's the
that.
way I would say success, what it means to me.
Have you ever had any backslides where you looked back and your photography is getting worse?
I'm probably in that phase now. I don't know. I think that's natural.
It is, yeah.
Maybe because last year was such a creative uh, boom for me. Just had a creative year. I don't know how to quantify that, but yeah, I think we go through those cycles, to be honest. And it's good to take a break every once in a while and re-energize and be inspired by other, whether it be other media, artwork, books, movies, other artists, and um, yeah, and then coming back to it um, with new energy. So yeah, I think it's natural to go through that
Yeah, and I
cycle.
think it's okay to take breaks too, you know?
I know you can't be 100% creative, every day. I guess some people can, but for me, it hasn't worked out.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it does take a while for me to disengage from my day-to-day, responsibilities, to be creative. And I'm envious of you with your multi-backpacking trips, being immersed in the natural world. I would love that opportunity to do that because I think that's a big benefit, a big help.
It's
It can be.
interesting. Yeah, no, it is. It's interesting though. I feel like on my backpacking trips, I'm probably the least productive
Mm.
photography wise, just because you're so focused on survival and
Like it eat.
getting to point A from point A to point B. Like you probably walk past all kinds of really cool photographs,
Yeah, that's true.
but it immerses you in nature, which is a huge, huge benefit.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess we could argue that returning to a place is also super beneficial and growing creatively.
for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, what are your methods for looking for inspiration?
Yeah, so last year as you know, I started to build this photography photo book collection from artists that I wanted to support and who I admire. So I think the first book I purchased was Eric Bennett's, our friend, and his book, which was phenomenal. So it basically set a high standard for photo books. And then from there, I just started adding more and more. I kind of got obsessed with it, to be honest. I think I'm at 20 photo books now, which is a lot for about a year. So I definitely been enjoying those, and during the winter break, spending some time looking through those. Um, so yeah, inspiration through photography books, inspiration through curated social media.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is being mindful of the artists that you do follow and being involved in and that community, sharing images and being inspired by images from those that you look up to.
you got any favorite photo books?
Now you're going to put me on the spot. They're all excellent, but of course we mentioned Eric's book,
Of course.
Sandra Bartoka. Yeah,
Yeah,
her
Eric's
recent
book.
books. There you go. Yeah, that's a great one. Sandra's books are amazing. I don't. She's got a great eye and a, an awesome way to pull together and organize her images that build a story. So there's like a journey when you look at one of her books.
Right.
So she
Yeah, yeah.
does it so well.
Yeah. Yeah, those are good. Those are good recommendations.
Hmm.
Well, along those same lines, I'm going to ask you the hard-hitting question here that
Okay.
you said you'd put some thought into, and you said it was really hard.
Well, okay, I think I know which one it is.
So, what's the difference between inspiration and copying, and how can viewers of the work tell the difference between the two?
Yeah, I think it's that latter question that's the hardest. But in terms of defining copying versus being inspired, when we first start out in our photography journey, the way we learn is by looking at others' work, other photographers' work, and kind of emulating either their style or maybe visiting the same locations that
Hmm.
they may have. And so, we're basically learning by copying, right? And where it change to me, where it changes from copying to and being inspired is looking at images and going into the field and bringing with you your own life experiences.
Hmm.
So you're inspired by somebody's work, but then you take that and you go into the field You don't necessarily copy the same style or the same technique, but you're bringing with you your own life experiences and expressing those experiences through your own work.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I hope
And
that makes sense.
yeah, it does for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
And
and it's, I don't know, have you had for me, because obviously I look at a lot of photography and certain
yeah,
images just kind of, they just stick in your brain, you know? It's like, it's there and it
right.
doesn't want to go. Do you have a hard time not letting that influence you, or do you just accept it? Like, what's your approach to that kind of influence?
Yeah, I think that influence is there whether you recognize it or not. It's in the subconscious, at least for me. So, yeah, you just have to be mindful of that as much as you can. And there's obviously a lot of recurring themes in nature photography, especially intimate landscapes. We're all shooting essentially similar subjects for the most part, whether it be water abstracts, mud tiles, rock abstracts,
Trees.
tree bark, the common one.
Oh
Come
God,
on,
well,
we all have that.
let's not talk about tree bark.
Yeah, yeah. But it's taking those common themes, right? But then also adding your own perspective, your own experience, your own creative eye to create something more unique, that represents you versus just a copy of somebody else's work. Not always
Right,
easy to do, for sure.
right, 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 right.
Yeah. And then copying, there's intentional and there's non-intentional, and we can go off on a tangent on the intentional copying that people do. I was the first to photograph this scene, but I didn't give credit to this other photographer who shot it 5 years ago. You know, that's a form of copying. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing to copy popular scenes,
mhm.
like going to Tunnel View or Mesa Arch or horse, the popular
The
iconic scenes. Like
icons, yeah.
that's like one thing. That to me, I don't see that as copying
Okay.
necessarily. It's where the ones that get under my skin is when someone who's well established already follows a bunch of photographers for their unique photos, and then they go copy those very unique photos that like only that person has.
Yeah,
To me, that for starters, I mean, it's fine if you want to do it, it's fine, but like give credit.
for sure.
This
Yeah, I
one
agree.
person has this photo before I did. They're the one. They're the person I saw it from, and they're the reason why I went and drove 6 hours to this spot and figured out on Google Earth exactly where they took the picture and all that.
Right,
Like, it doesn't hurt to just say, "Hey, Alfredo Mora inspired me to go find this image, and I captured it."
right.
But a lot of times, what we see is they'll go out and take the photo and even like get the exact thing in the corner or whatever.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah, yeah.
and you're like, seriously, come on, man. Like, and then they have like 100,000 Instagram followers and they're just eating it up. And meanwhile, the person who had the original has like 2,000 and
Right.
they get zero
Totally
love.
unfair. Yeah, yeah. That's where I draw the line for sure. Like, let's not do that. And um,
Yeah, I just don't understand it. Like,
yeah, I guess they have their own motivations. Yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah. I did a whole Instagram story thread about this a while
okay.
back, and everyone thought I was talking about icons.
Oh, yeah. See, I did the same thing there too. So
And I'm like, I'm not talking about Mesa Arch here. I'm talking about these like really obscure images that no one, like this only this one person has that nobody knows about except for like this very tight small community of landscape photographers.
right.
And then this person goes out and copies it and then gives them
And
zero credit.
yeah, yeah, that's totally wrong.
I think so. Okay. Totally shifting topics.
Okay.
What's your process for releasing images to the public, and what venues do you use to showcase your work?
Well, I tried something new recently, and uh, it's something that's becoming more popular with photographers, especially nature photographers. And it's this collection release or gallery release.
Right.
not gallery in the sense of physical space, but on your website, for example.
Right.
So the way it works is, at least for me, is over the course of 3 months, some time frame, or a season, you go out and you record these images. You take your time to edit them, to curate them, and you build this collection in Lightroom, right? And then at a certain point, you're like, okay, these are ready to be released to the public. And so you publish them on your website, and then you send out an Instagram story, or like for example on our Discord with the other landscape photographers, there'll be an announcement, or somebody will share it. So I did that on last, well, this recent fall season. So there was about 22 to 24 images that I released,
Mm-hmm.
all centered around the theme of the fall season. And yeah, it was interesting to go through that process. There's pros and cons, right? Uh, I guess some of the drawbacks are that you're taking your time to edit these images, and so you're getting further away from remembering the experience somewhat. And so that could be a potential negative, but there are pros. You can build this collection that basically expresses a message, that are tightly curated, that you can release as a set. Maybe as a set, they tell a stronger story, stronger
Mm-hmm.
message than
Yep.
an individual. I call it the conveyor belt release, where you release an image at a time,
Right.
which is what I used to do.
Yeah.
Many people do. But yeah, that was an interesting experience to go through. I'm currently sitting on a winter collection,
Nice.
so slowly building that up. I haven't been as active out in the field this winter. Just been super busy with work and taking care of the space monkeys and all that.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Uh,
need love too. They need food and water, and
oh yeah, they're a needy
someone's got to
bunch.
get it to them.
Yeah. So I'm sitting on these images, Matt, and there's a couple that I really want to get out, and I know photographers sometimes will hold images for years, and I don't know how they do that.
I know David
Uh,
Thompson is
David
kind of the
Thompson.
person that does this the best, I feel like, and
I don't
he
know how he does
recently
it,
put out a Death Valley release, and there's stuff in there from like 2011. I'm like,
and
you
it's
sat
amazing.
you sat on that since 2011? Are you serious,
It's
dude?
incredible, yeah. And Brent Clark, our friend, he does some from 2 or 3 years ago,
Right.
and they're
I
all
don't know if I can do
amazing.
that. I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see how this winter collection goes. I may go back to the one image at a time release. I'm not sure yet, especially since I'm not full time and I can't get out on a regular basis. It's hard to build a strong collection uh, because you'll release it and then it takes months to build a new one, right?
Right. Right.
So what are you doing? Obviously, you're going to release the images slowly over social media or on your website, but there's going to be a point where you're going to run out of images to share.
Right.
Um, but
That's where I'm at right now. Well, sort of. I mean, I've got a couple trips to Utah that I haven't edited the photos from yet, but
yeah,
there's not a ton of stuff in there that super excites me, so whatever.
yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing them. And sharing images on social media isn't the main driver for releasing work, at least in my view. We should, I would say, take our time, and when they're ready, whether
Right.
it be through a collection or individual.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I so I went on this trip to Antarctica, and one of our students turned me on to this idea. She releases her photos in these like storyboards
Hmm.
where it's more like a trip report sort of, but
It's like a blog or
kind of, but it's hard to describe. Like there's like maps, and then there's like stories about things that happen behind the scenes, and there's like it's more it's more based on the experience, but it's a little bit more than a trip report, but
hmm.
It's a little bit different than anything I've ever seen before, and I thought that was really clever.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I'll have
Uh,
to link it in the show notes. It was pretty interesting.
I like the way, and this is something that I've seen also recently, is the way Sarah Marino and
Oh,
Ron
yeah, David
and
Kingham.
David Kingham and others. What's I forgot this other young lady's name. She released an excellent. It's basically an ebook
Right.
that they've published with their images with text in some
Right.
cases.
Yeah, Michael Rung just did one too.
Yeah, I gotta. I mean, I'm way behind. I gotta check his work out. And um, yeah, so I think that's an interesting approach to releasing your images and in that format.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
takes a little bit extra, but and I think what's sort of genius about that approach is that it also can act as a lead magnet
right?
for newsletter signups and things like that. But,
For sure.
I guess Michael used PowerPoint. Whatever
Well, yeah,
works.
whatever works. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll check it out for sure. But
Yeah.
I may do something like that in the future. But for now, it's basically building the collection, maybe showing it to a trusted photographer, get their feedback. Okay, which images don't fit or are
Yep.
just weak, and then publishing them to my site and then kind of sharing the news. So that's the current approach I've been taking.
Yeah, I
Uh,
like it. Yeah,
yeah,
I've been trying to do that too when I can. Like if there's enough,
when there's enough. Yeah, yeah,
But if it's this summer, I probably went out maybe 5 or 6 times, and I think I got like three okay photos out of the whole thing.
yeah.
But it's like, okay, I'm not gonna do a release based on that. But
Right,
if you go on an amazing fall color trip and you get like 50 images you love, then it's much easier to do.
right.
Yeah,
And and this could lead into building projects. A
right.
project-based release. So there's a lot of opportunities there for
Yep,
sure.
yep.
And then what I've noticed recently also is folks have been, other photographers have been contacting me to kind of review their
Oh, cool.
upcoming releases.
Yeah, nice.
So that's been exciting to have the trust of people to say, hey, I have this collection of images. Do you mind going through and giving your thoughts
Right.
and see if they are cohesive or so that's been a lot of fun to go through that process with them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you advertise that at all?
I don't. I should start charging for that, right?
You should.
I'm just kidding. No, I do it just because it's a lot of fun and I am honored to do that. It's a privilege,
That's cool. Um,
and they're
couple more.
friends. So
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Couple more subjects.
sure.
What have your experiences been with entering photography competitions?
Yeah. So last year, like I said, I taking risks, right? Trying new things. So I wanted to see, especially based on the growth that I was seeing for myself,
Hmm.
not based on what others have commented on, but for myself. I wanted to see how much I've grown since adopting that mind shift and that new approach. And so I entered, well, let me back up. I did enter NLPA in its inaugural year. Really didn't have, should not have. I didn't do well, but that was expected. But I was really curious on the whole process.
Uh-huh.
But last year I entered again with a stronger body of work, just to see how I would do. Again, I go with these into these competitions with no expectations. So I entered NLPA year two. I entered this, which I've never heard of, this close-up photographer of the
Oh
year
yeah,
contest.
yeah, yeah.
And really the only reason well, not the only reason, but after more research, what got me hooked was the judges. I saw that Rachel Talabart was a judge.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, oh, this seems pretty reputable if Rachel's on there as a judge, right? So judging is important. The judges are important in some
Absolutely.
sense. So I entered that one, and I actually was awarded one of the finalists in the landscape nature category. So that
Nice.
was exciting. Um, and here recently, I entered the Sony Photography Awards. No expectations, it's free. Why not?
Yeah,
And I think they're announcing winners in April, but I believe winners should have been notified already in late March or
gotcha.
mid-March.
Uh-huh.
So again, no expectations, no harm, no foul. Uh,
Right.
those are the few that I've entered, but um, the one that has fared the best for me is the Natural Landscape Photography Awards, which is a contest that I firmly believe in, uh, and what they're trying to do and what you're trying to do with your team. So
Oh, thank you.
really was honored and you know surprised by the third place results and
Yeah,
that
you did
one.
awesome.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, we loved your images for sure.
Thank you. I can't wait for the photo book.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. I hopefully Tim's sending me the palette here
Yeah, you're
soon.
getting what, like 500 books?
Yeah. I
Good
can't
for you.
wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, actually it'll be fun because I got a system down now for packaging.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I can't wait to get my copy. So,
Cool.
yeah, but photography contests, I think if you go enter them with the right approach of no expectations, and just having fun with them, to see, kind of gauge where you're at creatively, I think they can be useful.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it can also open up doors for you in this community, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like we probably wouldn't have necessarily known who you were if you didn't enter, and now you're on this podcast. And I recently got a honorable mention in a competition in Spain, the Memorial Luisa,
Oh,
um,
that's awesome.
comp- and I'm going to the gala in Spain, so it's like,
Congratulations,
and
man. That's amazing.
yeah, thanks. I'm gonna meet all these other photographers in Spain, and I'm really excited for that. So, I
Yeah.
think I agree with you. Like, have no expectations, but some cool things can come of it if you do well. So,
Yeah, it goes back to taking the risks that we talked about, and
yeah,
just
why
see where it
not?
goes. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I got a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
So next to last one, you recently took up the role of moderating the abstract category for the Critiques on Nature Photographers Network.
hmm
What's that been like for you?
I'd have to say it's overall been a really good experience. Being involved in that community, as a moderator, looking at some really awesome work from the photographers that are submitting their images for critique. At first, I was apprehensive because, who am I to critique somebody's work? You know, but with practice, you kind of um, get a feel for what kind of feedback you should deliver, meaningful quality feedback. But yeah, it's a great way to help out NPN, and I'm grateful to be involved in that community as a moderator. So it's fun. It doesn't take up too much time. I wish I could dedicate more time. Like I said, I am busy during the week, but I do try to allocate some time each day to go in and check the post and provide that feedback to the community for the members.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I just set up email alerts for different
Yeah,
categories,
yeah,
and then when I get the email, I'll just hop in there if I have time, and you know, if I have something to say, I'll say it, and if I don't, I don't.
yeah, for sure. And that's a good approach.
Yeah,
And
I don't comment on everything.
right, yeah, it just takes up so much time if you're going to comment on everyone's posts, in all the categories. But
Right.
try to limit
Yeah.
it to nature. I'm sorry, the landscape and the abstract categories.
Yeah, I don't mess around with flora and wildlife and birds and stuff like those people would just laugh at me, so
I really should submit some of my wildlife images because they're not that great, but you know, it's more to do with the camera that I have than skill, you know.
Yeah, no, well, patience is one
Well,
that I
patience.
that I lack. I mean, come on.
Yeah. If you're gonna do it the right way, yeah, wildlife photography is its own ball of wax. It's patience
Yes.
and not just patience, but a good understanding of animal behavior
Hmm.
and biology and ecology and all that stuff. So
Totally, which is all really cool
it's
stuff.
amazing, yeah, to be
Yeah,
immersed in that. Yeah.
yeah.
But how I got the role of moderator, we go back to taking risks and saying yes to opportunities. I wrote an article for NPN on ICM photography last year, and it was a successful article that was published. People really resonated with that article and learned uh, my thoughts and my process behind ICM and how it impacts my creativity. And so that kind of led to other opportunities with Nature Photographers Network and ultimately this moderator position. So super grateful to David and Jennifer and the team over there.
Nice. All right, Alfredo, one more question. Who would you recommend our listeners learn more about, or who should we have here on the podcast?
All right. I think I sent you quite a few,
You
and
did.
I didn't adhere to your, 1 to 5 name list. Um,
Shame on you.
I know. And I'm going to add another one to the list that you may like.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
no order. And this is a testament to how many talented photographers are out there that are producing some amazing work.
Yes.
A lot of them have been on your podcast, Matt. Others have not, and others have been mentioned. But the first one is David Ward, UK-based
Yes.
photographer. Just an amazing eye for composition, and I love the sense of clarity and color in his work.
Mm.
Just super talented photographer,
Yeah, I like
and
his work
apparently a really
too.
nice
Yeah.
guy. He actually
Yeah.
responded to a message from me, so that's a win in my book. If
Yeah.
you're a good person and an awesome photographer, yeah, awesome. Next one is Michael Fry.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah,
He's been on,
oh, he has been on.
but
Okay,
we should have him back.
yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. I need to check out his show then,
Yeah,
his episode.
it's been a while, but yeah, I want to say it was like 2018, 2019.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
super nice guy and talented photographer, educator. So highly recommend him.
Yeah, he's like one of the nicest guys on earth.
He is. Yeah, he's amazing. Like, yeah. And he has amazing images. Another photographer, yeah, Kevin Monahan,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
did very well in the NLPA competition. I think he won first place in the, uh, help me out, Grand Landscape?
Yep.
Okay. So well deserved. Washington-based photographer. Beautiful, expressive work. So really a fan of his images. So I'd
Yeah,
like
me
to
too.
learn more about him.
Yeah, and we did a print exchange over Christmas. Remember that?
Yeah, I missed that. I'm not sure how I missed that, but
Yeah, we did a little Santa
I need to
Claus
get involved
print
this year.
exchange, and he was the person I got picked, so I had to send him a print. So
Oh, awesome.
hopefully he liked it.
Well, I'm sure he did. Your work is awesome too, Matt.
Oh,
So,
thanks.
all right, the next one here, moving along, Klaus Axelsson. Hope I got his
Yes.
last name right. Norwegian photographer, amazing images and wonderful compositions, a lot of mood in his images. So, fan of his work.
Yeah, I like his colors too.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of muted, but they work really well together.
Yep. I was
Yeah.
looking at his biography on his website, and he's got an interesting story to tell, and I think he'd be a good guest on the show.
Okay, cool.
A name that's been mentioned quite a few times, I think, and a photographer that I admire is Jason Pettit.
Yes.
Um, you know, just amazing work. His the symbolism that he injects in his images and the expressiveness, really awesome work. So, love to hear him on the show. Not sure if you know Kristen Weinhold.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think her name is Kristen Photography on Instagram,
Okay.
based out of Germany. I just love her creative journey that she's on. Her work has been getting stronger and stronger every time I see it, all her posts. So love to hear her story and her background and her creative journey. So just an awesome, awesome photographer.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah, along the same lines, Sally Mason, UK-based photographer, a lot of ICM work, a lot of emotion in her work. So really talented photographer that I'd like to learn more about.
Sweet.
A couple more names. Elvis, great name, right? Elvis Dolly.
Yeah, I like his stuff too.
Yeah, yeah, awesome photographer, super talented, and
Yes.
especially the intimate work, small scenes, just crushing it. So, um, seems like he's an enigma. I don't know much about him, but I'd love to
Um,
know more.
On Landscape did a feature on his work maybe last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I need to dig more into that then. Okay, I'll
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah.
Great. And you mentioned his name already, but he's just been amazing, especially recently. Cesar Yaneza? Cesar?
Yes. Yeah. His work is amazing.
Yeah, it's his abstracts are out of this world.
So good.
So tightly composed and just the color work.
Dude, he did one
Um,
recently that blew my mind. I think it was a little bit of ICM or something, or
yeah,
but it's like a all of the light had there's just like triangles. Did you see that one? Like it was a
yeah.
coastal image or
It's a
something?
coastal image, but it makes you think and look deeper. So it almost looks like a forest on the left
Oh,
side
it's insane.
with fog. And so if he submits that to a contest, well,
Oh, it's so
it's
good.
game over, I think, in my humble opinion. But
Oh no, it's when I saw that I was like, are you serious?
yeah, yeah, it's there are images that stick with you, and his is on top of the list. Along with all the photographers I mentioned, they have amazing work and images that speak to me. So yeah, those are
Yeah.
names I would provide for you and
Awesome,
recommend.
Alfredo. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, this has been so much fun and like finally we were able to pull it off. I think we've been trying to do this for a couple, maybe like a year now or something. So,
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Matt. I had a lot of fun talking with you, and hopefully I made sense in some of my rambling. So
oh yeah,
not used to
well,
public speaking, but yeah, I appreciate the platform and the opportunity.
of course, of course. Well, thank you to Alfredo for joining me on the podcast this week. I have long admired your work, so it was a real pleasure getting to know you better. If you enjoyed Alfredo's approach and would like to join both of us on Nature Photographers Network for critique, you can join by heading to npn.link/fstop. Make sure to use the code FSTOP10 for a 10% discount. Other than the amazing critique forums there, you can join NPN to gain access to countless discounts on tutorials, books, software, prints, and a lot more. Both Alfredo and I hope to see you there. Again, that's npn.link/fstop. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.